Hi, welcome to this Origin Effects video on understanding compressors. We've been making compressor pedals for over a decade now and wanted to put together a video for those who are new to compression. This video will help you get an understanding of compression as a broader concept, not just limited to the products we make at Origin Effects. A compressor affects the dynamics of your signal in ways that can't be achieved just with your playing technique. They can even out your dynamics for more consistent volume, add sustain, or emphasize pick attack. Although compressors started life in recording and broadcast studios, compressor pedals are now found in the rigs of many guitar and bass players across all genres. Compression is one of the defining features of recorded music, heard all over our favourite guitar and bass tones, either in the form of an obvious effect or more subtle processing in the mix. Now let's take a look at how it works. Put very simply, compression makes the quiet parts of your signal louder and the loud parts quieter. More accurately, it turns down the loudest parts of your signal, those that exceed a predetermined volume called the threshold. This process is called gain reduction, a term which you will see on many compressor front panels. Because only the parts of the signal which exceed the threshold are turned down, and everything below the threshold is unaffected, the overall difference between loudest and quietest is reduced. The lower the threshold, the more of your signal will be compressed. High threshold settings mean that just the very peaks of your signal are subject to gain reduction. Many modern compressors have a threshold knob which adjusts the threshold level. Some older compressors have a fixed threshold, like the Yuri 1176 that our Kali 76 pedals are based on. On these compressors, instead of adjusting the threshold, you increase the signal level into the input. This pushes more of it past the fixed threshold, compressing a bigger portion of the signal the higher you go. So, if the threshold determines how much of your signal gets compressed, then the ratio controls how much compression is happening to that part of the signal. To put it another way, when those signal peaks are turned down, the ratio dictates how much they are turned down by. Let's imagine we set a ratio of 2 to 1. This means that if we exceed the threshold by 4 dB, this part of the signal will be turned down until it's only 2 dB above the threshold. A ratio of 4 to 1 would see that same input signal turned down to 1 dB. Considering that the ratio controls on compressors often go above 20 to 1, compression has the potential to alter the shape of the signal quite dramatically. So far, we've seen the peaks of our input signal turned down below their original level. This makes the overall signal quieter, which isn't what we usually want from a compressor. To counteract this, compressors have something called makeup gain. This is an output gain control that allows us to boost the overall level of the compressed signal, compensating for the gain reduction that's been applied. By increasing the overall level so that the tops of the peaks are as loud as they were before compression, we've also increased the volume of all the quieter, uncompressed parts of the signal. This is where compressors get their reputation for touch sensitivity. All the quiet details that were previously lost are now increased in volume and can be more clearly heard in a mix, while the peaks of the signal are being suppressed so they don't jump out too loudly. This increases the average level of the signal without increasing the peak level, giving the impression of extra loudness and presence in a mix. One thing to consider when adding compression to a signal is noise. Because a compressor is taking all the low-level parts of your signal and amplifying them, without boosting the loud bits of the signal, this means that any background noise will also be boosted in volume. Most people tend to place compressors near the beginning of a guitar effects chain, so that noisier pedals like overdrive or distortion come after the compressor, and the noise that they add is not exaggerated by compression. People who use compressors after overdrive usually use less compression, also in an effort to keep noise down. Similarly, hum picked up by single-coil guitars will be exaggerated by a compressor, so it may be necessary to be careful with your compression settings if this is a problem. We know that signals which exceed the threshold are compressed, and that ratio determines how much they're compressed by. Now let's look at attack and release. We can think of a note on a guitar as being divided into two parts: the transient part at the start, which is where we hear the loud pick attack, and the decay, which is the sound of the string ringing out after being played. Attack refers to the amount of time between the signal exceeding the threshold and the compression being applied. The graph on the left shows the amplitude of a guitar signal as a note is played. This is the input signal into the compressor. We can see the transient portion of the note and the range in which the attack control operates. The graph on the right shows the compressed output signal. The green line shows the gain reduction applied by the compressor. We can see how the attack control affects the gain reduction applied to the transient portion of the note. When you lengthen the attack time, You're allowing the transient portion of the note to pass through the compressor at its full volume before the compressor clamps down on the decay portion of the note. Attack times are typically very short, a matter of milliseconds. But this is enough to allow the transient portion of the note through and really emphasize it. For example, the pick attack in a funk guitar tone. The longer the attack time, the more natural and open the sound will be, as the important transients are not being altered as much by the compressor. Conversely, very short attack times will see the signal clamp down instantaneously, never allowing the peaks to jump out. The release control works on the same principle, controlling how long the compressor continues to compress the note after the input signal has begun to drop. We can see on the graphs the effect the release control has on the tail of the note. Shorter release times will allow the compressor to recover between notes in time to let the attack of the next note through at full volume, like we saw a moment ago. These shorter release times result in a more natural response and a lively feel, as the compression follows the decay of the input signal. This is particularly useful for faster or staccato playing, and is the type of compression we typically associate with funk and country sounds. Longer release times will do the opposite, by continuing to clamp down on the signal even after the note has begun to decay. These longer release times prevent the compressor from recovering in time for the next note with faster playing. When a slow release is used in conjunction with a fast attack time, it's possible to give unnaturally long sustain to instruments, way beyond their actual capabilities. This is another well-known use for compressors on electric guitar, as a sustainer for lead tones, allowing notes to ring on without having to rely on extra overdrive to get the desired amount of sustain. This works very well for slide guitar and also for pad-like clean tones. Because of this relationship between attack and release, it's common practice to set these controls in opposites, speeding up the release time as you slow down the attack time. Lots of compressor pedals also allow you to blend in some uncompressed dry signal in parallel with the compressed signal. This is called parallel compression and is a popular technique in recording studios where the options for routing different signals are much greater. All the compressors in the Origin Effects range feature a dry control that allows you to achieve parallel compression within a single pedal, but we'll cover parallel compression in detail in a separate video. As is always the case when it comes to guitar gear, pro audio, and indeed music, there are no strict rules. If it sounds right, it is right. But having a better understanding of the principles and processes will always help you get the tones you want more quickly and consistently. Don't forget, you can find more information about using Origin Effects products in the FAQ section of our website. And you can also contact us with more specific issues at support@origineffects.com. Thanks for watching.